Hi, it's Arnold again from the Bund in Shanghai. A hot day, but really enjoying it, being here and the views. So my background is I used to teach in China, set up the company to help people move here. I hadn't been back to China since 2018, so I'm really happy to be back here in August 2023. So I just wanted to do a video now, talk a little bit about kind of what it's like, because I've been pestering, my contacts, my friends in China, these years that I couldn't go myself, like asking them like, what's it really like, what's going on. I heard a lot about certain things, and I just want to kind of summarize, I think, 5 points that I'm going to make in this video. So in terms of something that really stands out, it's definitely the technology side of things. I'd heard a lot about sort of all payments being online. It's close to that. I don't think, in my case, like I have reverted back to cash occasionally in trouble, and in some places that still works. But I would say definitely like 90% of the payments or 95% of the payments you'll do are online payments. So yeah, that's a really big change because it didn't used to be like that. So you need to have sort of Alipay set up. Alipay is easier to get. Like when you're abroad, you can. Week before I went, I think I download Alipay, connected to a credit card, or I think it's a credit card, UK credit card or debit card, either one works, and you basically go from there, and that means then you just scan your payments, and places where you go, that's the way you pay. When you're more established and sort of have a Chinese bank account, I think you can do the same thing with WeChat, but WeChat Pay currently in August 2023 does not work for foreign cards. But yeah, basically that's it. Like you use those two apps for payments, and then of course your maps. You could probably use Baidu Maps or other maps. So yeah, there's a bunch of technology you need to download. You need to get good with. I'm not good with it at all myself, but I think that's actually part of something that's actually quite fun and interesting. Like it's one of the skills you kind of develop by necessity in China. You just have to get on with it and deal with it, and it's good because I think that I live in the UK, and I think I'd never really, before COVID, I wouldn't have expected that we'd be paying with QR codes as much as we do and things like that. So I definitely think the sort of things that I'm experiencing in China today, 5 to 10 years from now, if not sooner, we will experience in most countries. So it's good. It's good to kind of get used to get ahead of the curve and become good with it. I just think, the first few days, there were a few things, and this is a material for probably a separate video that I'll probably do at some point, but there's things that go wrong, like, your VPN, I think, it's a thing here that, actually my VPN this time was really good. I used VPN, it's brilliant. I actually had no problems with it. But there's on the technology front, there's things like, when your VPN's on, sometimes making a payment in a Chinese shop will not work. That's a really key one. So those kind of things, or your Bluetooth, if it's not on, your online payment might not go through. So those are the sort of things that I experienced a lot in the first few days, and I've heard from people that I've met on this trip who've just arrived that they had similar experiences. Once you're through it, I think that the second half of my stay was already much better. Like it was much easier. So I think once you're here and once you're establishing yourself, you're living here, you'll get on with it. And actually, if you don't speak much Mandarin, like unfortunately I still don't, like it's actually probably easier to manage things, because you go into a shop, you scan something, and you're on your way, really. So that technology, big one. So then a second topic, how are foreigners received? Because I know obviously the pandemic was such a difficult period for everyone globally, and I heard quite a few accounts that during the pandemic it became a bit more difficult for foreigners here. It was obviously really strict. Treatment of foreigners in certain places wasn't the best at times, I think. So I was curious what it was going to be like in 2023, and honestly I've really had no bad experiences at all. I actually found it quite interesting that when I was in Wuhan, like a number of years back, when I went, I would sort of walk through the street and people would shout like "Lao Wai, Lao Wai," like foreigners, and things like that. Like this hasn't happened at all on this trip. I think it's related actually to the first point about technology, that people are so into their phones and so buried in their phones. In the metro, for example, like 80 or 90% of the people will be glued to their phones. No one's looking at me or anyone else. So that makes it easier. I think that makes it like, it's not a big deal. Like really, like it's friendly. It's great, and there's no issues really at all. Like in terms of being a foreigner and sort of moving around here. Related to just the first point about technology, I think I've heard often when I met Chinese students in the UK and we're talking about China and sort of how they felt about living in the UK compared to China. I think something I heard a lot about was, you know, this idea of China being so convenient and being so easy with online shopping and things like that. It's totally true, I think, in my experience as well, because with my family now, we've been eating, I really like this kind of, you know, soup and sort of a rice roll with eggs. And that's just my part. So for 3 people, we're ordering a few dishes and they tend to cost £4, the equivalent of £4, 35 kwai. £4 for the delivered brilliant breakfast for 3 people, and yeah, you can order it every day and it's fantastic. So the same really for eating out. It's really quick. It's really, I was really surprised actually that food costs were so low. Also transport costs, like I came here in the metro in Shanghai and it costs, you know, 3 kwai. So that's, you know, something like, you know, 35 p really, you know, for a single journey. So it's really convenient. It's really, once you know your way around, it's super, yeah, easy to navigate really. Another point, okay, so this is kind of related to, you know, maybe the aspect related to China and how they are with kind of collecting data, CCTV, things like that. I think this is one that I think is different compared to my last visit. I'm here to Bund, I'm looking at a battery of CCTV cameras now. There's a lot of that, you know. Also, when you buy train tickets or buy tickets in general, on all the online shopping means that your ID is linked to your WeChat ID, it's linked to your phone number. So basically everything's integrated, and there's a lot of ability to follow, you know, to track what you're doing, like what's happening. This is the sort of thing, I think it really just depends on your views on this kind of thing, because I have friends who don't want to come to China for this reason, who just feel like it's not for them. Equally, I've spoken on this trip to some of our teachers who were living here for several years. They couldn't care less. They think like if you're obviously living a proper life, what difference does it make? So I think that's the sort of thing, it just comes down to your own views. And I do think for me, like when I first arrived again, I noticed it much more. 2 weeks on, probably noticed it less. So that's the sort of thing, you know, it's sort of depending on your personal views, and I think with time it becomes less of a noticeable thing in your daily life. Finally, and I'll do another video on this specifically, just, you know, what it's like. It's just an incredible place. It's just it's always been a super interesting place, China. I think so different in terms of the culture, in terms of how things are done. At the same time, I also think in some ways, like its standard of living, in the use of technology, is actually getting closer together to other countries. But obviously still super distinct, and that's just the main takeaway I'd have every single time I come to China. It's just that it is unforgettable and it's interesting. So I think that is in itself very much worth coming out here for, I think. So I'll do a separate video about why you'd come to China, so definitely check that out. It's here on the channel. If you have any questions, put in the comments and I'll definitely answer them. Cheers.